Deputy President of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, Engineer Mokuolu, Fnse. He is here with his amazing wife, Mokuolu. Engineer Adekunle Mokuolu, Fnse. We have some of the National Executive Committee members here present. I have the honor to introduce a Vice President who doubles as the National Chairman of Nigerian Institute of Polymer Engineers, Engineer Fnse. We welcome the chairmen of branches and divisions represent. All the past chairmen of the branches and divisions, you are most welcome. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I want to encourage us to have our speeches. If you have not got registered, kindly go out and register as you come in. Before the program commences, we want to have a short documentary. Just for 3 minutes before we take off officially.
Informing you about analysts who suggest that the country needs about $2.3 trillion to address high infrastructure deficits. This has led to suggestions that developing Nigeria's infrastructure will require significant private sector funding, strong collaborations between government and the private sector, and a medium to long-term view on the benefits and economic returns on investments in the country. From the private investor's perspective, some of the important factors that will accelerate sustainable infrastructure development in Nigeria and ensure the realization of the country's potential include better project planning, stronger technical partnerships, mobilizing the right equity for infrastructure projects, and innovative financing arrangements. And what? Distinguished Senator, thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, Nigeria.
For this evening.
Thank you. I'm
here.
Good morning, Nigeria.
From our Kaduna studio, we are being joined by Professor Ibrahim Misijaro. He's of the Department of Geography and is also Director of Center for Disaster Risk Management and Development Studies and Food Safety.
Pickens. However, it sounds nice, theoretically very easy, because the truth is, where is the private sector in Nigeria? Is there any private sector institution in Nigeria that is standing on its own? Project in Africa generally has been so unsuccessful. In fact, we have PFI. If you use a commitment and for us to show examples that it is important that whoever will use that role will pay. But we do have that kind of discipline in Nigeria. The public
and then the engineer Adekunle, Mokuolu, who is of course the president of the Nigerian Society of Engineers. That's a wide gap. Even the master plan itself also prescribed 31 trillion. Very wide gap. How did we get to this thing?
Thank you very much. The thing about infrastructure is that you need to have very good policies, very good planning. That's by government. The citizens too, they need to have the right attitude. In this country, professionals, need to get involved in what government is doing and help government. Government is there, yes, but there are some things we can do to volunteer as professionals. So, for example, with the engineers now, we are looking at ways in which we can help government in generating data. In fact, we do some services free so as to be able to help government. Again, also, the ones that we have, the infrastructure that we have, we want to make sure that we get the citizens educated on how to use them so that government will not be wasting money on maintenance. The other thing is that when we talk about infrastructure, that huge money you can make it if everything is going well. If you have these traffic jams and so on. And their roads are always going bad almost everywhere. One governor now came, and the reason was that people drive on the shoulders. They will send him to the psychiatric hospital and examine his head, whether he's a normal human being. So, they are normal. But the thing is that their attitude is wrong. Another example is that this lack of infrastructure master plan and where for development of our towns and cities, even in places where there are master plans, people abuse them. They need regulation and enforcement. So we should not just be looking at money. The thing is, let's start doing it. There must be a change. When we do the right thing, everything will start flowing. And of course, like I said, everyone right now, we want to partner with government and help them do things free, so to say, so that our country can move ahead. And essentially, nothing is free. We will have to advocate this by telling Nigerians, look, we are doing this, please help us to do this for our government so that we can enjoy life. Because government is not the only one using the infrastructure.
We'll get to that. There is one wonderful stick kicking on vehicles. Sometimes there's a waiting lawyer to do stuff. Now we'll find out what are the engineers doing. Because if over time, this is what engineers also have advised government from time to time, I'm sure we don't get to some of the service states we have found ourselves today. We'll come back in the course of the discussion. Senator Ibibabaroyal, what are those imperatives in delivering an infrastructure for economic development? What has a country like ours? Over the years, we've had it so bad.
You see, there are issues which you have to take into consideration.
one, for an investor to come in and invest into infrastructure projects, there must be an act to guide them and give them strength to perform and then recover their money easily. The ICRC we had, which is couldn't have a strong act to be able to assist investors to invest in Nigeria. So recently I had to sponsor a bill, which is the Federal Road Authority. And that encompasses the role which the investors can enjoy the act or the law and be protected by the law, and then the Nigerian government will also be protected by the law. That bill has been on the drawing board for over 40 years. The government wanted to have that bill so that it can give room for it.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, may we have our seat, please. Please let's get seated. We are starting the program immediately. Please let's get seated. If you have not registered, please. You are kindly permitted to do so, but let's get seated. We are starting immediately. May we rise for the national anthem. We want to take the opening prayer, and I want us to go to page 2 of our vocal station, the second stanza of the national anthem. O God of creation, direct our noble cause, guide our leaders' voice, help our youth to speak to know, in love and honesty to grow, and living just and free. Great lofty acts of faith to build a nation where peace and justice prevail. Thank you so much. You may be seated. Once again, I want to welcome each and every one of us to this gathering. The Pre-Investiture Colloquium towards the investiture of our 31st President of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, Engineer Adekunle Mokuolu, Fnse. We have in our midst this morning a past president between 1989 and 1990 of this great and wonderful society, Engineer Ibibabaroyal, Fnse, OFR, FANG. You're welcome, sir. Also in our midst, we have the past president between 1996 and 1997, the chairman, board of trustees of the great society, Engineer Engineer Dr. EJS Ujaman, Fnse. Also in our midst, we have the past president between year 2000 and 2001, Engineer H.A. Gumel, Fnse. Here we have the past president between year 2008 and 2009. Today is the sitting president of the Council for Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, COREN. And by the special grace of God, he is the special guest of honor for this occasion, Engineer Kashim A. Ali, Fnse. We have the past president between year 2010 and 2011, the Agbaki of the Source, and the incoming president of the Association of Professional Bodies of Nigeria, Engineer Olumoyiwa Alade Ajibola, Fnse. We have Engineer Dr. F.A. Shomidi, Fnse. And we have the past president for 1995, Engineer Dr. Wo Ajayi, Fnse. We have the past president between year 2014 and 2015, Engineer Ademola Isaac Olorunfemi, Fnse. Like I earlier introduced, in our midst, we have the wife of the Deputy Governor of Delta State, a fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, Engineer Mrs. Ebieri Ochuaru. You are welcome. Just coming, we have a one-time Deputy Governor of Osun State and two-time Senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who represented Ife-Ijesha Senatorial District. We have Engineer Dr. Iyiola Omishori, Fnse. We have the executive members of the Nigerian Society of Engineers in our midst. We have Vice President. You are welcome. We are welcoming all the chairmen of branch. Highly welcome. And here in our midst this morning, we have our amiable Deputy President, Engineer Babagana Muhammad, Fnse. He's here this morning with his amiable spouse, Ajia Babagana Muhammad. I think she just stepped out. And I want to introduce the man of the moment, the 31st president. On the chairman of the committee of the Pre-Investiture Colloquium.
Thank you very much, KLM. I start by recognizing that God, the beneficent, the merciful, please chase the Satan out of this place. The great engineers and officials here, I stand here by privilege of being given an opportunity to head the Pre-Investiture Colloquium Committee by the present president. Before to my welcome address, I want to break the tradition of going through a very lengthy protocol and with very, very high respect, recognize all the past presidents, the incoming president, the president in waiting, and all ladies and gentlemen. My chairmanship, I have to report to all of you, of this committee resulted in only one single physical meeting. We met as true engineers digitally. We discussed through email, WhatsApp, Facebook, and we responded to the change mantra by concluding everything that you have seen here using the cloud. So I want to, in front of all of you, recognize my committee. When I was appointed as the secretary to the government of Adamawa State, everybody knew that literally this committee was a failure because I will not have the time. So when we created the digital platform, I requested the president for us to have an alternate chairman who is excellent in running around, calling people, sending mails, replying mails, and with deep respect, I want to recognize my alternate chairman, Engineer Mokuolu Odesanya, Fellow, Nigerian Society of Engineers, for recognition. Where are you, my brother? And the following were the B's behind the two of us that ensured that it all happened. Engineer Abiodun Awe, Fellow, Nigerian Society of Engineers, stand up for recognition. Engineer Ezekiel Adekunle, Fellow, Nigerian Society of Engineers. Engineer Adeolu Ogundare, Fellow, Nigerian Society of Engineers. Engineer Deniron Felix Ibitoe, Fellow, Nigerian Society of Engineers. Engineer A.B. Abdul Malik, Fellow, Nigerian Society of Engineers. Engineer Abbas Mohammed Ishola, Fellow, Nigerian Society of Engineers. Engineer Dr. Ezekiel B. Koka, Fellow, Nigerian Society of Engineers. Engineer Saliu Lawal, Fellow, Nigerian Society of Engineers. Engineer Efanyi Ofili, Fellow, Nigerian Society of Engineers. Engineer Ademola Agbola, Fellow, Nigerian Society of Engineers. Engineer Mrs. Kemishola Falola, Member, Nigerian Society of Engineers. Engineer Adeolu Taiwo, Member, Nigerian Society of Engineers. Engineer Sani Bungudu, Member, Nigerian Society of Engineers. Engineer Joseph Okiagona, Member, Nigerian Society of Engineers. Engineer Mrs. Neka Mwagugu, Member, Nigerian Society of Engineers. Engineer Rashid Abdullahi Agava, Member, Nigerian Society of Engineers. And we were joined, following my recommendation, with Engineer Saidu Jidda, Fellow, Nigerian Society of Engineers, if he is here for recognition. And we were all energized and panel beaten by Adewale Falade, our great secretary. And the co-secretary, Ms. Olubomi Ajayi. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the people who made is for the 31st president. If you take an average that each president will spend 2 years as president, 31st means 31 times 2 by the year 2020, we are looking at over 60 years of existence of the presidency. Now, Engineer Mokuolu recognized our committee literally to continue as the roundtable committee to forge for him the way forward. We had our first physical meeting yesterday. And what we told him was that, I said, engineer, if each president were to have encouraged only 2 engineering projects to demonstrate to Nigeria that engineers are serious, that means by now we would have been celebrating at least 60 different projects that are functional all over Nigeria. Whether they are solar-powered boreholes, whether they are primary schools, whether they are primary healthcare units, whether they are rural roads, whatever. He now has to ensure that those standards are followed. He accepted. Ladies and gentlemen, lastly, I want to welcome Her Excellency, the golden lady of the engineering profession, the lady and the wife of the Deputy Governor of Delta State. She is here. She came here first. And when I asked her that when we see leaders of this nature coming before even the time that was specified, we are encouraged. She said, this is her own model. Ma, you are welcome and thank you very much. With respect, I welcome all the past engineers, and 98% of them are here. With regret, the IPP, the immediate past president, called and informed the current president that he is actually catching his flight. Maybe because of Hamatan, he missed the flight last night. But he will be here and he sends his apologies. I recognize all the engineers in this hall and I welcome you. To trigger this literally conference or our colloquium to proceed, I want to jump from the welcoming remark to now inviting the key people to the podium here. I want to invite Engineer Dr. Christopher C. First of all, I want to invite our own keynote speaker, Engineer Dr. Patrick Amoa Beko, P-E-N-G-H-I-E. I'm sure this has to do with Ghanaian Engineering Association, who is of the Department of Feeder Roads, head office in Accra, Ghana, to come over here and take his seat, please. Engineer Dr. Patrick. May we welcome him with a round of applause, having accepted the nomination to actually come here and guide us. We have 4 discussants. I want to start by calling my former boss. Before I was SSG, he was my boss. Now I'm SSG, my power has started power small. Engineer Professor B.A. Adekunle, Fellow, Nigeria Society of Engineers, Fellow, Nigeria Institute of Agriculture Engineers, please. See here? Escort the great man to his seat. By next year, when elections are started, I will expire. I also want, with due respect, call Engineer Dr. Christopher Chukura, Director, Physical Planning and Development, University of Agriculture, Umudike. Thank you, sir. I want to also call Engineer Ibrahim Jibril, Fellow, Nigeria Society of Engineers, to also come and take his seat. And lastly, I want to call again my former boss, Professor Sadiq Abubakar, Fellow, Nigeria Society of Engineers, Fellow, Nigeria Institute of Agricultural Engineers. If you have a copy of the program, you will notice that these gentlemen will discuss, after the keynote presentation, strategies for accelerated development of Nigeria rural areas. Now that Senator The great senator is here. He is a senator, he is a fellow, he is an engineer of repute. We welcome, because I reserve this to the last so that people will know the greats have also greater. Engineer, doctor, in fact I add professor on top of it. Maybe can stand up for recognition. But distinguished senator said one thing before I trigger the whole thing to start. He said, Dr. Binde, who wants to come to listen to strategies for accelerated development of Nigerian rural areas? Who? I was dumbfounded. I said, oh God, everybody. And I said, no, you must tell me. I said, sir, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria should be interested in this. So I want to ask here, is the President here? Certainly the President is not here. So, who will have come here to listen, to tell the President of this important thing? The Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Is the Vice President here? I think if he was here, we would have seen security all over the place. Who would have listened to go and tell the Vice to tell the President? We have approximately like 40 honorable ministers. Is there any fourth honorable minister here? None. If we switch over to the civil service side, who would have come here to listen, to brief the minister so that the briefing will go out? We have nearly 50 permanent secretaries. Is there any federal permanent secretary here? Okay, let's switch over to the legislature. We have 109 senators. Maybe they would have listened to this and start making laws. Is there any distinguished senator here serving? Okay, let's reflect to the other house. We have 72 governors and deputy governors put together. They should be interested in rural areas. Is there any governor or deputy governor here? Deputy governor is representing Delta State. That is the only name with governor there. Let us go lower. We have 774 local government chairmen elected. They should be interested in rural areas development. Is there any local government chairman here? None. We have nearly 10,000 ward councillors elected in this country. Is there any ward councillor here? You see? So Senator said, you guys are fond of talking to yourselves. And we are here again talking to ourselves. If there will be change to the extent that the strategies for accelerated development of Nigerian rural areas should work, these elected people, somebody would have been here. This is the next assignment of the incoming president. Mr. President, every time you have a function from your administration, these target layers must be here. We have done the mathematics, we have done the physics, we have done the biology, we practice engineering. We know what we're talking about. The people who need to listen to translate to development are never here. But as a humble SSG, I welcome all of them. If you can't see the president, you can't see the vice president, you cannot see the senators, me as SSG, I can see them. They are all here and they are listening. So with that, I call the MC to make the final recognitions before we trigger our keynote speaker. You are all welcome and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, my chairman. Another round of applause for the chairman, please. In our midst this morning again, we have the past president of the Nigerian Society of Engineers between years 1993 and 1994. Engineer past president Vincent Maduka, Fnse. We are lucky here this morning. We have a great woman in our midst, the wife of the past president I just mentioned. By the special grace of God, today, she is the sitting president of Nigerian Academy of Engineering. Engineer Olu Maduka, Fnse. She is also the chairman governing council of the Osun State Polytechnic, Ire. Also in our midst, we have a past president of the Nigerian Society of Engineers and the immediate past president of the Federation of African Engineering Organizations, Engineer Mustapha Balarabe Shehu, Fnse. I have earlier introduced the ESCO members here present, but I can see Vice President Engineer Joseph Olatunde Akiteye, Fnse, here. I also have ESCO member Engineer Professor Toyin Abdubakir Abdurrahim, Fnse. Also in our midst, we have ESCO member Engineer Chinyere Unlena Igwebe, MNSC. We have Engineer Dr. Abdurrashid Babalola, an ESCO member, MNSC. We also have the Executive Vice Chairman of NASENE here in our midst, Engineer Professor M.S. Aruna. You are welcome, sir. At this juncture, I want to hand over the microphone, finally, to my able chairman, Engineer Adekunle Felix Ibitoye, an ESCO member of the society. Thank you.
Riding on the permission of the chairman, with due respect, I want to now Beko to now deliver his lecture. We have already discussed with the paper presenters to be very concise with their discussions. But while our engineer is getting ready, we now want to call upon
are the ones that should be getting the national honors in this country. They've been feeding us consistently, and they've been using their sweat capital in their various farm plots to feed us. Yet, we neglect all social amenities that they should enjoy. We neglect to train even their own children. We neglect to give them good education. We neglect to even interact with them. We run away from them whenever they want to come near us. Yet, they are the one giving us the hidden strength. They are the one giving us what we need as human beings to exist. Sometimes their labor, they see it even wasted because there's no road to bring what they sweated for, even to the place. The way forward is to go back to them so that we can enjoy life, because one day, they might get tired, or disease, because of our negligence of their well-being, might wipe them off from these rural areas. And most of us don't even know how to hold a hoe, not to talk of farming. Today, you are welcome to history. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Another round of applause for this great man, please. Without too much waste of time, we are now entering the technical session. I now have the pleasure to invite the lead speaker, who will speak to us, as I said before, on strategies for achieving accelerated rural development in Nigeria, Engineer Dr. Patrick Amoah, who has traveled all the way from Ghana to come here and talk to us. Engineer.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's really a great pleasure to be with you. And coming from Ghana, I bring you felicitations from the people of Ghana. And I'm really glad to be here once again. Congratulations, Engineer Adekunle Mokuolu, and thank you for the invitation. This morning, I'm going to present on strategies for accelerated development of Nigeria rural areas. And this is going to be the order of my presentation. I'll give some introduction, then look at a review of rural development strategies globally. I'll not spend much time on that. Then I'll focus on strategies for Nigeria. I've been doing a lot of thinking, reading also about Nigeria, and I've come out, and also in Africa, and I've come out with some strategies that we can, as engineers, recommend to government towards rural development. And finally, I'll talk about conclusions and recommendations. Now, because of time, I will be brief in the introduction and the review. As a way of introduction, about 51% of Nigerians live in rural areas, according to statistics. We have also a high rate of urbanization. 54% also are between the ages of 15 and 64, which means we can take advantage of this demographic dividend. There's also high youth unemployment, and about 70% of the people are below the poverty line. And this is from an estimate, 2010 estimate. I couldn't get any current data. However, government over the period has embarked on various poverty reduction programs. Those who are old are aware of the 1976 Operation Feed the Nation, the 1993 Family Support Program, and the 2004 National Economic Empowerment and Development Strategies. The gap between the rich and the poor continues to be wider. What do we do as a country? We are aware that the federal government has prioritized poverty alleviation in consonance with the Sustainable Development Goal. So we need to reduce poverty, and poverty resides mainly within these rural areas. What do we do as engineers? So I'm going to talk about some of the rural development strategies that has been embarked upon over the period. There have been some main drivers of it. The main drivers for rural development has been centered on exploitation of our natural resources, mainly agriculture. I mean, worldwide, if you even look at Europe, they have focused on agriculture as the focus on rural development and also forestry. However, times have changed, and because of increased urbanization, the character of rural areas have also changed. Now we are looking at issues of tourism, recreation. So there are other areas that the world is focusing on rural development. There are also different approaches that are used to tackle rural underdevelopment. Some of them has been the top-down approach. Most often than not, and this has been led by the World Bank, what you see is a participatory approach where development, there is what we call negotiation or an association between those at the top and those below. This is one of the approaches that has been used, and there have also been different models that have been used, and I'm going to focus on the models that have been used, especially by the donor agencies. We have what we call the sectorial, multi-sectorial, territorial, and the local approach. Why do I say this? As I said earlier on, we've been focusing on agriculture and looking at one sector. So we go to one rural area and we focus on agriculture, and that is the main driver for rural development. In the multi-sectorial approach, we are looking at different sectors, not only one sector. In the rural areas, what are the other sectors that we can develop? So we are looking at diversification, and another form of the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. They do rural development, they'll be doing some roads, but it's not well linked to agricultural development. So I have proposed what I call the Rural Development Authority, responsible for initiation, planning, coordination, and monitoring of all government rural development programs, both at the federal, state, and local levels. The RDA will be responsible for assisting government to develop policy programs and projects geared towards developing rural areas in Nigeria. The RDA may be at all levels of government, but their main role is to achieve coordination between the different agencies. And I have given a model which I'm going to talk so much about. Unfortunately, I think it's not clear on the screen, but the whole model is that RDA will be at the center. They will be linked to government, so at more of a ministerial level, but it's an independent authority that coordinates with the various ministries, that coordinates with various research institutions and universities, that coordinates with various financial institutions, the rural communities, and I'll talk more about that later, and also private sector and donor agencies. They will be responsible for coordinating all rural development so that with the data and information that they have, they can communicate easily with government on bringing focus to rural development. Now, I will quickly jump to some of the roles that RDA is supposed to have. Now, RDA can also will be responsible for the development of for the rural development of the rural agenda. They will be responsible for collecting data, which could be demographic, socioeconomic, health data of the rural areas, and they will coordinate development programs geared towards the development of rural areas. May I say at this time that they will also be responsible for developing proposals for specific rural areas within Nigeria. RDA will ensure that development projects and programs are achieved using an integrated multi-sectorial approach. And I'll spend time later on to talk about what I mean by integrated multi-sectorial approach. Now, the main reason why I'm focusing on the establishment of the RDA is because of the lack of coordination. You go to many countries, and my country is an example. You have the Ministry of Roads and Highway, the Department of Federal Roads. We do roads, but we do not have any linkages with the Ministry of Agri. We don't have any linkages with the Ministry of Electricity or Power, as you call it over here. So the purpose of the RDA is to coordinate development within the rural areas and also to bring focus so that if it's water, there will be that linkage and they will know that, okay, with the data that we have, this is where water expansion is going. Okay, roads, you need to, so there will be this, and now with information technology, they can coordinate and bring focus into the rural development of various areas. And this will be achieved, as I said, through an integrated multi-sectorial approach. The whole purpose of the integrated multi-sectorial approach is to harness the synergies of combining the different actors in rural development to ensure sustainable improvement in the standard of living. It also requires development programs to be a cyclical combination of top-down, bottom-up, and participatory approach, which I earlier talked about. This concept does not preclude a single sector from leading the developmental agenda, but we try to also bring other sectors to support. So I want to give an example from agriculture. Now, the whole focus of agriculture, rural areas, setting up of small-scale rural development, or rural industries or enterprises, and how can that be achieved in an integrated multi-sectorial development? I will use this, I think this is quite clear. First, in the rural areas, it is encouraged, and this is done this was done under a special project in Ghana, which is the GASI project, where rural folks were asked or were encouraged to form cooperatives. And these cooperatives could now access funds from government. I've explained that in my paper in detail. They could now access funds from government, from financial institutions, and other donor agencies. And it also encouraged mechanization of agriculture. I believe one of my colleagues will talk about that, agri-mechanization. And government also supported them through irrigation schemes. So within the area or the territory, these things were done, and industries, the private sector, governments, were encouraged to set up industries to add value to the agricultural product. So in the agricultural sector, in this multi-sectorial approach, we are talking about value addition. We are also talking about how the rural community can be employed. This approach also requires that we encourage the private sector to come in through PPP agreements. I know when we talk about PPP agreement, people think it's something big, but I will give a very simple example to illustrate this. So when a private sector goes to a particular rural area to set up an industry, they could use their land as equity, and that could be a form of a PPP agreement. So the focus of rural development should be on industrialization in terms of agriculture. The second thing I want to talk about is rural infrastructure. Without infrastructure, proper rural infrastructure, we cannot develop our rural areas. And research has shown that development of roads, in principle, bring other infrastructure on board. And rural roads needs to be established, needs to be all-weather accessible. Rural roads needs to be well established to ensure that agric produce comes to our industries, come to the city center. And I have proposed, one, that the Federal Highway Authority set up the rural road departments in each and every, at the local level, so that they will focus on rural road development. This has been done in many other countries in Africa. We can talk about Tanzania, South Africa, Ghana. And the focus of this rural road department is on labor-based construction, what we call the labor-intensive method of construction. And the whole idea is to ensure that people are employed, the rural folks are employed. And how can this be done? First, engineers need to be trained on this method of construction. Contractors, cooperatives, the rural cooperatives, individuals should be trained. You can only be engaged in rural road construction unless you, at every state level, there will be a training school that will ensure that rural roads are developed. The second thing is that when these people have been trained, they can be asked to do the maintenance of roads. So They are within the area, they've been trained, so when it comes to road maintenance, they can actually be part of the maintenance of road and they have sustainable income. In South Africa, the EPWP, who is in charge for these labor-intensive works, have realized that most of these people, when they are engaged in the rural roads construction, actually get some source of livelihood and they are able to open other small-scale enterprises. Some of them actually open barbering shops, salons, and we also encourage women to be involved in rural road construction. This is something that we can employ in our rural road development. Road construction tends to be very expensive, and most often government needs to come in. But I have detailed in my paper ways and means that we can use a PPP approach even in rural road construction. We think about PPP, and we are talking about maybe a foreign company coming in to partner government. But in rural road construction, we can also look at PPP, which is well detailed in my paper. I just want to show you a picture of how roads can be constructed using labor. These are lightweight equipment, labor from the rural areas. Women are involved and they get income. Contrana, in 1987, we started a similar thing, and the rate of unemployment actually plummeted because of this policy. Unfortunately, getting to 2000, actually around 2000, this whole idea died down. We are now actually reviving rural roads construction using labor-based construction, and I'm a part of the people who are actually involved in the development of rural roads using labor-based construction. Actually, this is a picture of some of the roads that we've constructed in recent times using the labor-based technology. Having said that, there are other infrastructure areas that needs to be developed in rural areas. The others are the rural housing, rural electrification. I'm sure the other speakers will speak about some of them. Water supply and sanitation and communication. These are required in our rural areas, but my focus is employment generation and the use of local materials. We cannot develop rural communities by using the same old approaches of equipment-based. We'll go there. In principle, when we use equipment-based, we end up impoverishing the rural pool because the roads are done, they live, and they do not have any form of livelihood. We should look at livelihood empowerment and through labor-based technology. I'm sure some of my colleagues, civil engineers, may not be happy that I'm talking about labor-based technology because they think it's old-fashioned, but it is not. We can get the same quality and standards if we do proper supervision. It has nothing to do with poor quality. Those of us who were trained outside and especially look down on rural road construction using labor-based. But the time is changing. We need to bridge the gap between the poor and the rich, and we need to give them a source of livelihood. So let's focus on employment generation and the use of local materials. Just want to conclude by saying that achieving accelerated rural development requires proper institutional framework and a concerted effort in an integrated multi-sectorial development. Rural, the RDA is what I have prescribed. It's like creating another institution, but with the focus of coordinating and monitoring of rural projects. There is the need also for proper agribusinesses, cooperative and infrastructure geared towards sustainable employment and ultimate improvement of the standard of living in rural areas. Finally, I will want to end by a quote from the 11th President of India. He says, half of the population of the world live in rural regions, and mostly in a state of poverty, even violence. It is time we look at rural development through a concerted effort, and I'm glad to be part once again of this colloquium. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, our keynote speaker, Engineer Dr. Patrick Amoa-Bekoe. Another round of applause for him, please. Listening to him reading out the strategies, I don't envy the incoming president. I don't envy the president in waiting, because we are in 2018. You will all recall, before 1999, Abacha, may God be with him, reeled out Vision 2010. I don't want to go back to who was the president then. Abdul Salam continued with Vision 2010, and 2010 came and passed. But in 1999, when President Obasanjo took over, many of us here were involved in forging the Vision 2020 National Economic Empowerment Development Strategy needs. We had a lot of engineering and non-engineering discussions. Quietly, the 8 years passed, and President Yar'Adua, may God be with him, continued with the Vision 2020, but under a very well-articulated 7-point agenda. Again, the gentleman passed away. President Jonathan continued, still with the Vision 2020, but under a very well-articulated transformation agenda. Now, we are with President Buhari, who is still maintaining Vision 2020, but with the change mantra. And between the present president and the incoming president, 2020 will overlap that time. So your file on delivery, summarizing from needs, through 7-point agenda, through transformation agenda to the change mantra, is now in your hands. If we can't deliver 2020 in the next 2 years, then we'll have to start all over again. But to be able to clarify how our engineer Mokuolu will do this, I now have the honor to call the discussants. The first one, my boss, Engineer Professor Adekunle, to come for 10 minutes, discuss very concisely on the agricultural perspective. Your Excellency, sir. We're used to this in the States.
Thank you, my chairman. All due processes and procedures, I stand on such protocols. I'm addressing the title, Strategies for Achieving Agricultural Accelerated Rural Development in Nigeria from the agricultural engineer's perspectives. Okay. What's the problem, please? Okay. Thank you. It's in agricultural engineering, we have the whole of agriculture and the entirety of engineering going into a marriage romance. So we have to look at both the agricultural, the engineering aspect, and of course, the economic aspect in this aspect of presentation. I will talk on about 3-4 issues before I conclude. First, rural center as an agrarian domain. Secondly, rural centers as agro-industrial domain, which should be given agro-industrial status in Nigeria. Then I talk on issue on competitiveness and cluster system in agro-industrial centers and development for Nigerian rural area development. Then I conclude. The rural centers as agrarian domain, definitely we have the largest population of Nigeria in the rural areas. And of course, between 80 and 90% of those people are involved in agricultural practices. Then we must just accept that is an agrarian domain. But the problem in the rural areas is that they have low yield in their production, cause low income, simply because of so many reasons, but principal among which we have poor infrastructures, poor agribusiness outlook, and these are the issues we have to look at very seriously. Agric is taken just as hobby and a means of livelihood, but not as a business in the rural areas. We have to change this philosophy and let our farmers know that agric will not only feed them, but it's a business that can make them to be above average. Also, there is poor entrepreneurship outlook in the way agriculture is practiced in the rural area. I have to say that well accepted that agriculture is to provide food, but beyond that, seriously. Now, the agro-industrial status of agriculture is a strategy. In the regional government in Nigeria, after the colonial era, we were able not only to provide our food, but also to supply the raw material for industries in the Western world, and that is still possible. Despite the large population increase, we still have the land, to the point that many other countries are coming now to grab our land for agriculture. We still have the land and the water resources. So despite the increase in population, we can still cope. The problem is that while we are producing, we have a lot of wastages. And when the products are coming, all the products come at the same time. There's no technology to store, no technology readily available to process. And when farmers are bringing out their product, this product will come into the market flooded, and the price has to drop. So how we can harness the resources that are coming from the rural area to develop industries that they can service and reduce even costs for transportation should be cited within, will have had a lasting impact if the rural areas were accorded agro-industrial status. They are not just agrarian domain. They should be seen as centers for agro-industrial development. And we should facilitate rapid infrastructural development in the rural areas to be able to achieve this. The link with funding is also low. In the world economy now, we talk of
the incoming 31st president of our great and noble Society of Nigerian Chief Engineer, Engineer Adekunle Mokuolu. Congratulations, sir. Mokuolu. My topic, my perspective on the issue is on strategic synergy and planning for rural development.
our distinguished chairman has mentioned those who are not here and who are missing. We need to synergize with them. When AWO was raising his 4-point agenda, one of them was integrated rural. Are you with me? Integrated rural development. That was one of the 4 cardinal programs of the then UPN, underlining to bring to the burning point again, the front burner, this very vital and important issue. I therefore want to, in introduction, define what is rural development. It is a process that promotes and enhances modernization, productivity, increased income, quality of life, employment, and industrialization of rural communities. Rural communities in our context are those clusters of human habitation in the village removed from the urban centers with a population of 5,000 people. Rural development in the past, in the best form, uses an integrated approach to provide increased and improved physical, social, agricultural, and infrastructural facilities to communities. Thus, rural projects and rural facility provision and maintenance and management are fundamental factors in rural development. Taking cognizance of these important definitions, the Nigerian policy on rural development incorporated laudable objectives. And what are these objectives? One, it's okay. Promotion, there are about 7 objectives there listed, as you can see on the screen. What are the constraints and advantages in meeting these objectives? The constraints are also listed here, and they are chiefly consist of lack of focus on programs, 1, poor funding, and over-concentration of efforts in the urban areas. However, there are immense advantages to be derived from pursuing aggressively and synergetically and significantly a robust and planned rural development in the country. These include elimination of prevalent poverty, misery, and low quality of life, and enhancing prosperity in rural Nigeria. And in this rural Nigeria, like we have heard, 51% of our people dwell there as per 2005 estimate. In the census of 1963, total rural population was 80%. And by 85, it has come down to 70%. And these estimates on us, the ministries, department agencies, are agents that will transform our rural communities to sprawling, civilized, prosperous communities. And basically, to know what each community, rural community in Nigeria has as their natural endowment. And those that are really rich in them, we can focus on those rich areas and use them as model villages, model rural villages that our intervention could all be focused to address and transform. And this addressing to transform means we must plan. Thorough, prior planning will help to promote, and that we must address to planning to ensure that we are getting it right now, tomorrow, and next tomorrow. And these disciplines are financial discipline. If we budget for rural development, is it getting there? Those disciplines of in the financial area must be removed. Second is technological discipline. Those technologies available for rural prosperity, are we applying them? Are they available? If they're available, are we consistently applying them? And the last one there is what I call, planning discipline. We must plan and make sure we are consistent in driving the plan to fruition. And one of the best ways to help us in this is what I call strategic planning. We all know it. It is trying to know what is on the ground, evaluate it, know the strengths, know the weaknesses, know the opportunities, know the threats, and try to work on the weaknesses, work on the threats, and enhance the strength, enhance the opportunities. Once that is done, we'll find that the status of our rural population can move from misery to glory. We now call on the status of technical and social life in rural Nigeria. I won't waste so much time there because it's already well known. Communities. And we are saying our management professional communities, what I call STEM. Agricultural perspective there, but the area I would dwell with more seriously is the area products, the technical products of these research institutions, like PRODA, that is the Project Development Agency, like Raw Material Research Development Agency, like Federal Industrial Research, OSHODI, the Nigerian Building and Road Research Institute, the Nigerian Water Research, Nigerian Institute of Water Researches, the Nigerian Educational Research Development Council, the Nigerian Information Technology Development Agency, NASENI, and the National Crop Research Institute, UMUDIKE, should play critical roles in this synergy we are referring to. What are these highlights of this recommended synergy? Education is number one of rural communities. It's key to the appreciation of the needs. Teachers should be availed of Edicom website to enhance their teaching and subject matter skills. And in particular, I want to stress here, in our time in primary schools, we had what they call handcraft centers, where we, from our school, primary school, will go and learn carpentry, as woodwork, metal work, fabrication, concrete work at its mainstream, even at that primary school level. We are saying here that these professional bodies should find a way to link up with the communities to have functional handcraft centers in clusters of rural communities. The second recommendation here is on health infrastructure. We are saying that since malaria is a major cause of sickness in the rural areas, there should be enhanced rural environmental hygiene and occasional spraying from time to time using technology that is derived from Nigeria and the chemicals that are derived from Nigeria. Thirdly, we have mentioned the model villages earlier. We are saying here that each local government area should designate some rural communities as model villages. You will agree with that there are so many villages in Nigeria, there are so many rural communities in Nigeria. We must zero into specific ones and use them as model. And when those models are functioning and working in the way that are translating them from rural misery to rural prosperity, others will see them and begin to ask, please come and do so in our community. And the people that will synergize to do this are the people I've mentioned there. That is the FURIO, PRODA, and the Nigerian Raw Material Research Development Council. The creation of variable rural development agency. When I was the chairman to reorganize Public Utility Board in Delta in 1997, January to March, I recommended the formation of a rural development agency, and the governor approved it, and it's still existent now. And I'm saying here that many states have not done so, and this should be done. A formidable rural development agency should be formed in each state, and they should synergize with the State Planning Commission to plan out in detail what my first speaker has mentioned earlier, so that there will be a synergy between the Rural Development Agency and the State Planning Authority, State Planning Commission, and link up with our professional bodies. We should be able to enhance the village prosperity that our president has brought to this conversation. Rural power supply and motorable roads are key to modernization, and this should be the function of the Nigeria Energy Commission to synergize with us to make it possible. Number 6, agriculture is the mainstay. State, federal, and local government extension officers should adopt aggressive knowledge dissemination strategy to assist rural farmers with new techniques of farming. Extension officer 7, financing rural development. Before I end, financing rural development is very challenging due to absence of viable bankable proposals and high risk in providing agricultural and technical services in an unorganized and underdeveloped environment. But this is the reason for the funding of microfinance banks. It is strongly recommended that rural microfinance banks should be set up in all proposed modern villages and viable village clusters to help finance rural cooperative bodies for medium and large-scale commercial agriculture, and provision of needed infrastructure on a competitive basis. In conclusion, therefore, despite the extant noble, laudable national policy on rural development, lip service, neglect, lack of seriousness, planlessness, voluminous, immense haphazardness in policy implementation have characterized rural development in Nigeria. The result is massive rural-urban migration, rural poverty, misery. And to reverse this ugly scenario, the current conversation on the issue, initiated by the 31st president of Fnse, Engineer Adekunle Mokuolu, is a very commendable step in the right direction, and every right-thinking government, corporate organization, and agency and stakeholders should support this patriotic initiative and join in the strategic synergy and plans to achieve rural prosperity. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Join me again to thank Engineer Dr. Christopher Chukura for a wonderful paper. You would have noticed that his recommendations are 7, which re-echoes the 7-point agenda. I hope we'll suppress. And I forgot to do the roll call that I was doing, and Engineer Ali, our special guest of honor, said I must do it. He said I have to ask, how many SSGs of the 36 SSGs are here? Is there any SSG here? Raise up your hand. Respect. Invite Engineer Ibrahim Jibril, fellow Nigeria Society of Engineers, to talk to us for another 10 minutes. Your Excellency, sir.
Good morning, sir. The President, past presidents, fellows, and all other protocols observed. How does it work? Yeah. Okay, to go forward. Thank you. My focus today is on rural water supply, but I've taken time to go through what we actually need if we are going to do
gender responsiveness. The endangered part of our society has to be taken along, protected, and empowered. The vulnerable groups, in the course of this, I will have mentioned them. These policies and these strategies have priorities. They were clearly defined for our nation. Clearly defined. But the policy implementation of the integrated rural development in Nigeria will be centered around design and execution of programs. And these are the 5 areas of priorities: promoting rural productive activities, supportive human resource development, enhancing and enabling rural infrastructure, areas within the context of policies, strategies, and priorities. Now, when you take the first, rural productive activities, these were the key areas that were listed: fisheries, livestock, forestry, whatever. Second, mineral resources development, small and medium enterprises, manufacturing industry, marketing and distribution, rural financing system. They are the areas that were, like, I think one of the speakers mentioned, let's identify endowed localities and initiate programs that will make people to sweat. Like the president said, their capital is their sweat. Like the lead speaker said, labor-based the human resource development. Rural development cannot be achieved unless we have supportive rural resource development and utilization. And this is the aspect of human capital development: health, population, education in terms of skill, knowledge, and whatever. You could see them, research and extension, information and communication. The infrastructure, many have mentioned, are there. Now, the last 2 I would like to emphasize: special program for these targeted groups, and you can see them, well articulated: the women, the youth, the children, the elderly and retired, the handicapped, the beggars and destitute, emergencies and national disasters, and economically distressed, even the attention as rural areas to be able to develop participation. I'm sure this is now one of the key areas picked by the donors. The lead speaker mentioned the weak institutional framework to show that for us to be able to act with the legal framework and the legal recognition and the function that they are supposed to play, promoting the rural development agenda of our great nation. And they are there. You could easily see there are those that are supposed to regulate, those that provide policies and legislation, those that will enforce the laws, those that operate capacity development, those that generate innovations, the representation, and whatnot. One aspect which is very important is the issue of funding. How do we fund rural development agenda? Certainly, what we saw is not the best. So, multiple funding mechanisms, which I believe a lot of the donor agencies are championing and are setting the agendas for us. But the issue of sustainability will catch up with us. It will collapse when they leave. The last, I think the lead speaker talked about the PPP concept, and he explains it. It is at the bottom of this slide. It is one of the most sustainable funding mechanisms when you look at the productive areas that we like to privatize, like to have investors in that area, specifically in the area of agribusinesses and SMEs. These approaches are quite handy. He also talked about, the lead speaker, talked about performance, coordination, monitoring. This is lacking, and this is one of the key challenges that we have. I will miss our role. What are we expected to do? I have provided that. NSE, right from training the young engineers to the divisions, to NSE, to Koren. I've tried to provide how do we support this agenda. I'll move to the conclusion. It's not moving. Yeah, okay. There are, of course, challenges which we reviewed and just want to share with you. One cardinal challenge is the infrastructural requirement, issue of land reform, which the 7-point agenda tried to address, the issue of legal title rights to be able to use land as a collateral in agribusiness or in SMEs. The understanding of the whole concept of integrated, like the lead speaker mentioned, how do we mesh in, looking at all aspects of the rural areas, the prioritization, we need to set it correct, the low capacity of the community to initiate and execute projects, because it should be community-driven, it should be community-based and what have you. These are also areas. How do we solve this problem? Second challenge, the mindset, the financial exclusion, the traditional institution, the labor-based activities, like the lead speaker mentioned. How do we deliberately promote labor-based activities that will create employment for our people in the rural areas? Here is the issue of transportation. How do you solve this? This is the life of a typical rural setting. So the community capacity audit, we need to audit our capacity at the community level so that we'll be able to know which program can they execute, because it has to be community managed, community driven. How do we solve the issue of the home family energy crisis? This is going to continue. The engineers should look at the aspect of briquettes with mixture of powers probably to Ogun State. No doubt about it, because people will have to eat, people will have to cut wood. So what are the alternatives for them? These are rural issues. The way forward. I have 5 issues to just mention. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. We need to increase the diversity and number of rural-based and driven initiatives that covers the integrated approach, reflecting on our endowment and competitiveness. All the speakers have mentioned this. Rural-based endowment and competitiveness. Diversify the projects in the rural areas. Second, promote agro-based economy. We need to create rural economics that are agro-based and labor-intensive. Again, they have concurred. Approaches with the potential to expand into SMEs. So we must know where we are coming from so that we will leverage it and move to industrialization. You can't be talking of industrialization when you are having somebody carrying his goods that are developmental, not ornamental, not the cake sharing. What infrastructure do we require? Rail line, rural road, mixed energy, solar energy farms, and what have you. How do you connect them with our productive activities in the rural areas? Sustainable development has to have a balance between rural and urban. And lastly, promotion of agro-businesses and mobilization of stakeholders to establish clusters. One of my colleagues mentioned it. The clusters within each community based on their specialty and capacity. I thank you very much. This no work. My president.
of the discussants. Traditionally, colloquia or a colloquium is similar to a TED lecture: technology, education, or engineering and design lectures. There are no questions and answers per se, but we will pick some opinions to help the President forge a plan for execution. Mr. President, you invited Engineer Dr. Patrick all the way from Ghana, and he has come well prepared. He has given a generic strategy outline on how to accelerate development at the rural level, or what we call the bottom of the pyramid. Please join me to thank Engineer Patrick for doing justice to the paper. Can we end there? Writing on this paper, we have our own Engineer Adekunle, who came and expatiated on the agricultural engineer's perspective. You know, the sad thing about Africa is that it used to have 54 countries. With Morocco coming on board now, it is 55 countries. With Sudan dividing into two, it's approximately 56 countries. But 100% of the countries in Africa are underdeveloped. So there's no osmosis. The osmosis is only osmosis of poverty. So when you say rural development, it seems like you're talking about the whole continent. And the characteristics of this rural is that poverty is high, social infrastructure is weak. We would have thought that because poverty stands to be the #1 problem, our universities would have had faculty of poverty eradication. Unfortunately, there is not one single university out of the 150-something, at least in Nigeria that I know, that has this poverty eradication educational institution or department or faculty. If you don't have that, where will the manpower to solve poverty come from? You have engineers, you have lawyers, you have water people, you have economists, but poverty requires this superhuman being to deal with all this. And I can tell you one secret today, that is the secret of creating the agricultural engineer. He is everything, and he is not specific. I'm sorry, the others that are not. Anyway, so our Adekunle, agricultural engineer's perspective in this whole thing, and then we have our own master, Engineer Dr. Christopher, who reeled out the planning for this whole thing in a systematic manner. Our own Engineer Ibrahim Jibril spoke about blueprinting this process. And finally, we have our professor of professors, Professor Sadiq Abubakar, who took time. I think he had a lot of pictures to share with us, but because his brand is that if you give him 10 minutes, he will spend 5 minutes. He actually spent 4.5 minutes, and thank you very much. So, we have concluded this. We are going to package all the proceedings of these papers. Our rapporteurs are working to have the traditional communique or summary, but before we actually start wrapping things up, I now have the pleasure riding on the approval of the program and the President to now call people to make remarks. I have the honor first to media people. We have our microphones, the wireless. We can put the ushers, two or three on the, to have the honor to call my boss, my father, my brother, my mentor, Engineer Inwa, to make his remark.
Thank you very much. I'm a little bit worried because for those of us that have been in this society for over 30 years, in 1987, we had a conference in Port Harcourt, and I was first vice president of this society. It's like the deputy president of today. And the theme of the conference was rural development. And we discussed everything that has been discussed today. That was 31 years ago. Nothing happened in this era. DFRI, Department of Food, Roads and Rural Infrastructure. Nothing has changed. The chairman must create groups within this society. In the case of NSC, 40 years ago, we used to have a group chaired by Engineer Chief Fnse. And what they used to do was, if we are going to bring a governor, or if we are going to bring a senator or a president, these very high senior engineers will send them and they'll go out and work on him or her, and they will appear here. So therefore, I think the first thing this president has to do is to set up a committee that will be working on Mr. President for Nigeria, on our senators, so that when things like this are being discussed, carry them along with them, so that we begin for another 30 years, so that let's do something on people that will work, not on us. We are, I don't know what I would call us born again. We are already there. We understand the problems. But these guys that might understand. I'm happy that Deputy Governor's wife is here, but I don't know how much influence she's going to have on the deputy.
Have at least 2 comments. This one will have 2 comments. That one will have 2 comments. But before then, let us give opportunity to some of our seniors and
said that is medicine to this revision of criminal justice code. So for us, I want to implore our colleagues, profession being significant and popularized in the government, this nation can go to nowhere, I'm telling you. I've spoken at various fora, for the belief that everything in an hospital, from stethoscope, is engineering, apart from the drugs. So the earlier we sit up, or just start moving paper,
and still, I think only the last speaker, so that we can make use of a huge young labor. In India, constructing this type of roads that the lead speaker mentioned, you have a human chain called a cast of sand and gravel and so on, just to keep people employed, so that by night, all these young men are tired and they just drop off to sleep. So, my husband, who's always talking, says, how are they to make babies? I can assure you they still make babies. So I have other points, but I think I'll stop here. Thanks very much.
About the low percentage of gender sensitivity on the panel, I'm happy to report to you that while she was speaking, I did a short research. Engineer Patrick is married. Professor Adekunle is married. Engineer Christopher is married. Engineer Ibrahim Jibril, between Engineer Jibril and Professor Sadiq, there are at least 3 or 4 wives. And I'm sure that they will report their experiences back home, and therefore this has neutralized the gender imbalance. But to completely balance it, I call my father, Engineer Maduka, to join the presentation plus the presentation of his wife and react briefly.
To charge all NSC branches to adopt 1 rural area each or be disbanded. With a view to
undertaking certain works which are technology-based. I give a small example. In my little hometown, and I didn't go there until I was 16, you went to the water point with a bowl on your head, and your bowl was filled from a small fall. When I went back there about 30 years later, the place was completely silted, and people are now collecting water on the ground. Now, engineers can still turn that into a mini turbine for that little town. Let us not wait for big government from Abuja. One day, the capital of Abuja will probably be moved further away from human beings. All right? Get down to where the people are and the needs are, and build them roads, build them markets as volunteers. NSC branches can raise money. I'm not saying it's easy. Nothing is easy in engineering. And do the work. It's a good thing that somebody says, let's go into politics. We've been talking about going into politics since NSC started. I'm not sure it's easy. Those who are in politics should tell us how they got there. Let's face it. It's not something we know how to do. We were not taught how to get into Nigerian politics. But maybe we'll get there one day. But we can do rural engineering. And I think, just to repeat the point, that every NSC branch, maybe division as well, but start with branch, becomes irrelevant if it is not operational in a rural area. Please, Mr. President, can I challenge you with that? And thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. President will have another minute to react at the end of all this, but I was going to call my elder brother, my uncle, Engineer Jibola, to make a remark, but I think he's going to answer a phone call. Before he comes back, may I, with respect, invite my president, still the president, Engineer Olorufemi, to make a statement.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, distinguished Vice President, my colleagues, having listened to the earlier speakers, President Inowa, President Maduka, and the Senior Senator, I think we're on the same point. I would just quickly say one or two things without the risk of repeating myself. One is that, yes, government has a lot to do, but we have a lot to. We couldn't attract, apart from Senator Omishore, who, even if he has it on rumor, he will come to an NSC event. We couldn't bring one member of House of Representatives here, unless yeah, and even the Senate. So that at least in the process of enacting laws that is in the offing, to get them involved. I'm sure the president will step this up. I know over the years, we've had contacts. We need to rejuvenate the contact. It is difficult to drag them in, but it's not too difficult. And one of the ways is to sustain our interest in politics, not necessarily by being a candidate, but by supporting the candidate in our individual capacities and in our corporate capacity. We've done that in recent times. Let us do a lot more. We also need, as engineers, to see the opportunities in rural development. I think the tendency is for us, all of us, to look to the big three-figure million jobs. There are so many things we can do in the local area, especially using the strategy that President Maduka said. But it could actually be business.
Otherwise,
yeah. Now, we need to the development of the rural areas and put them in technical paper development.
The need for institutional frameworks. The problem of our country is that even a good program, once a new government comes, it throws it out. And I think it is bad. There will come transformation agenda, or will come change agenda. What's the difference between change and transformation? It's not the same. And yet, the change will always be negative, or the transformation will be negative. I think let us adopt things that worked for us.
Thank you very much, sir.
PTF worked for us. Somebody came and threw it out because he doesn't like something.
Thank you.
I think we have to look at it. We have to...
Development Authority. I appreciate the President and the Deputy President and the entire team. I want to congratulate you and I wish you all the best. I want to specifically speak on being active in politics. I have heard a lot about how we are supposed to make the rural transformation possible. But then, if you count between the ministers in the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the governors, you're going to count not less than 20 lawyers. What makes them more special than the Engineers Society? This noble society, why do we sit down and keep telling ourselves what to do? Why we submit the proposal, we submit the recommendation, and the decision maker puts it down. I want to continuously ask that we must not take the back seat no more. If we have been saying it 30 years ago, we keep saying it. As a person, as a woman, I also want to ask, from 1958 till now, if the Nigerian Society of Engineers is doing the same thing all over and all over, when are you going to give a female president? Let's think about it. If you need a change, you have to do something a little bit different from what you've been doing before.
Thank you.
From 1960 till now, when we Nigeria have a female president, we don't even have one female governor.
Thank you.
Every place that the engineers have ruled, you can see, check the states that are ruled by engineers. You can see very, very great progress in those states because what you know, you will implement.
Thank you.
If you take the states ruled by engineers, you take the ministry, you take even state ministry, there will be difference. So what I'm asking you today is that Nigerian Society of Engineers, this noble society, must ride on. I contested to be governor of Benue in 2007 and 2015. And I'm also still praying, but because this society has to move ahead. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We are beginning to come to the end of the proceedings. I have been advised, Mr. President, that your reactions are reserved until you give your lecture at the dinner, so you can react to all these contributions. Somebody was saying younger generation. Younger generation, wait for your time. Okay, the overruled. One younger generation, please. I've been overruled. Which one is younger generation? Deputy Chairman, choose one younger generation. Younger generation. Nigerian younger generation. Just one, please, quickly. The problem is, in Nigerian younger generation, their date of birth is always on declared certificate of birth. It's not Quickly, please, 1 minute.
My name is Francis Chenge. I'm the son of engineer Dr. Mrs. Rosinada Chenge. I'm studying at the University of Liverpool as an engineer. I'm in my final year. And I heard a few comments about generating electricity in the rural areas. And I was thinking of suggesting, how should I put it? Miniature nuclear reactors, because they are sustainable. I wrote a paper on sustainable development. And when the other engineer spoke about sustainable development, I was surprised, and I knew that the Nigerian Society of Engineers are doing something really amazing. So I wanted to just comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think it is a very clear indication that the young are actually coming up. Ladies and gentlemen, I now have, what? One more? Because of time. Yeah, okay, just one, if you can do it in half a minute. I want to contest presidency.
We can help ourselves. We can borrow, I'm Engineer Mbahot, God save us. We can borrow a leaf from China. We can see Chinese construction company. Even they are here in Nigeria, taking contracts from Nigerians. Nigerian Society of Engineers can form a construction company that will have branch all over the 36 federations. Because our problem is not the manpower, but the equipment. If the Nigerian Society of Engineers can provide the equipment for these companies, the companies can do all these things we are talking about. Engage the youth service. The IT students will be trained and will be able to take contracts. It will be self-sustaining. We take contracts from the local government, from the states, from the country as a whole.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the President of Koren to come over here and make a short remark. After that, we do the plug presentation to the speakers, and then we'll wrap things up. Your Excellency.
Mr. President of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, past presidents, fellows, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellency, my sister, the wife of the Deputy Governor of Delta State, please, thank you for coming. I'm delighted to be at this auspicious occasion as part of the event leading to the investiture tomorrow of the 31st President of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, Engineer Adekunle Olumuyiwa Mokuolu, Fnse. At this forum, in this audience today, I can say majority of us are from rural areas where there are no good access roads, pipe-borne water, electricity, etc. Despite the fact that we are engineers. I'm aware also that Adekunle Mokuolu, to congratulate him. I'd like to allude to the fact that the country as a focus has had rural development from the beginning of the creation of independence of Nigeria. From 1960, there have been programs on rural development. That led to the formation of many institutions in Nigeria, the agric banks, the rural development, all kinds of banks, People's Bank, all those were towards improving the life of the rural person. But the misfortune is that each time institutions like that were created, people were posted there, saw those areas as places for stealing. DFRI was a woeful failure. I was telling some people who sat near me that there was a case of an engineer who was director of DFRI, who was giving his friends culvert construction at places that there were no roads. No roads. And he was giving them contracts for doing that. How could you utilize the money meant for DFRI? That is one example. The issue of rural development, again, we have to be pragmatic in the way we deal with them. I was sharing also with the wife of the deputy governor. She said she created a farm in her area just because she wanted to empower the women. None of the women was interested. She has to be going to the farm herself to get people from other places to work. And I was saying, the truth about Nigeria is that we have a lot of ego problem. So if you want to do work in Onitsha, for instance, go to Sokoto and look for people who work in that farm. They will work. If you take people from Onitsha also to go to Maiduguri, they will work. But if you say we should work within their area, they will not work. That is why I see Nigerians cleaning streets, we're washing dead bodies in the US, but they will never do such menial jobs in Nigeria. So we also have to understand that psychology of our people, that don't get people doing labor work in the areas of their residence. Well, the day has been fast, and I don't want to go through my speech, but I want to say once again, that the strategies brought forward at this colloquium have been all-encompassing, multidimensional, economic, social, institutional, and physical. If we can harness all these, I think it can contribute to moving forward the growth of our country, because there is no growth that can take place until we have been able to make the ordinary person important. And the ordinary person is important only when he has access to basic infrastructure. Today, Mokuolu, that your tenure will break the record of the best tenure ever. Because Nigeria needs to.
Thank you very much, President of Koren, our special guest of honor. We now have the last operation of the event. I have here the secretary of my committee who is going to do some magic here. I have the co-chairman here. We are going to take the flags, pass it through for President to give whoever I call. I now have the honor to call Engineer Dr. Patrick Amoa Bekoe, who has come all the way from Ghana to give the keynote speech, please. Look at the cameras for picture session. Thank you very much. I now call upon Engineer Professor Adekunle, who is one of the lead discussants. Thank you very much. I now call upon Engineer Dr. Christopher Chukwura, our second discussant. I now call upon Engineer Ibrahim Jibrin, Fellow, Nigeria Society of Engineers, please. And finally, I call upon Professor Sadiq Abubakar. Thank you very much, Mr. President. We have prepared the communique, but because of time management, because you have registered, you have your email address, we will send it to you, but it will be read at the dinner so that the President will have a list. Technically, my wrap-up comments directly connected to the rural development is to give you 3 or 4 points so that you can take it up in your administration and make sure that you shine, as commented by Engineer Ali. Do you know that this country, we have a working Earth observation satellite in the sky? We have a working communication satellite in the sky. One of our agencies has developed the telemedicine facility that you can take a bus connected to the satellite to any part of Nigeria and deliver rural Nigeria or any university high-tech product so that we can also shine developing our rural areas. Second, I don't know how Engineer Inwa will tell us how long that Naseni has perfected the portable. As we speak today, we have it on the table for the last 20 years. We have not managed to push it to the next level to make sure that our rural communities become at the highest level. Our own medical pharmaceutical institutions developed what many people knew as Nicosan. Out of 900 claims in the world, the Nigerian Nicosan came number 1 as the best sickle cell anemia management drug. Yet, we killed it because we are insensitive to our rural areas. I can continue listing these. Therefore, Mr. President, added to everything that is said here, policy, projects, strategy, everything, Nigeria has got the ingredients. It is now, as Engineer Ali said, your responsibility to now cross the T's and dot the I's so that Nigeria's know-how, Nigeria's science, Nigeria's technology, innovative Nigerian products can now flood at least Nigeria. Otherwise, each time our policymakers talk about local content, they are not talking about Nigerian brains, local content. They are talking about Adire, about shoes in Kano, about all these things that are totally not content, not to talk of local content. You need to bring local content to solve the rural communities' problems. With that, I have to now call upon the acting executive secretary of the NSE, where is he, to come. I used to call vote of thanks. Literally, it's chasing people out of the function. But I mean, it depends on what he reads. So come and give your vote of thanks. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. MC. The President, Nigerian Society of Engineers, Engineer Adekunle Mokuolu, Fnse, all past presidents present, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank Engineer Dr. Umar Buba Bindri, Fnse, the chairman of the Pre-Investiture Colloquium, for putting together this wonderful package. Permit me also to thank the lead speaker, Ing Dr. Patrick Ansabekwe of the International Road Federation, the guest speakers, Engineer Professor B.A. Adewumi, Fnse, of the Center for Entrepreneurial Study, Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta, Engineer Professor Sadiq Abubakar, Fnse, of the School of Postgraduate Studies, ABU Zaria, and Engineer Dr. Chris Chukura, Fnse, of the Physical Planning and Development Department of the Michael Opera University of Agriculture, Umudike, and also Engineer Ibrahim Jubril, Fnse, program. And of course, like I said earlier, it's just a pre-investiture program. There are other programs lined up for the investiture for the weekend. I just want to urge us to stay back, enjoy yourselves, and have a great moment. Thank you very much for coming, and God bless you all.
Thank you very much. You will notice that he has not thanked me. Mr. President, sir, you have assigned me as the chairman of this pre-investiture colloquium. I have introduced my team, and God willing, I think on a scale of 0 to 10, at least we have gotten 20%. Have we delivered or not? Those who think we have delivered, say aye. All the others, you don't even mind. Thank you very much, and I now hand you over to the...
Appreciate you, sir. On this basis, because we have no more time, we want to go to the mosque. We Muslims want to go to pray. But before then, I want to invite the president of the Nigerian Society of Engineers to the podium here to have group photograph with the speakers and the chairman of the committee. Immediately after that one, the committee members will come up to have their own group photograph and will do the closing prayer. Please, while that one is on, we want to officially introduce the past executive secretaries here in our midst. I have Engineer Zakari Ayitogo, Fnse. You are appreciated. We have Engineer Ahmed Amchi, Fnse. And we have a past president between 1989 and 1999, Engineer Charles Mbanefo, Fnse. The current registrar is here in our midst, Engineer Camila Wakpa Maliki, FNSE. Thank you so much. I want to inform our distinguished engineers and guests that the program has been on live on YouTube, on Twitter, and on Facebook. And it's going to continue. And be informed that there's going to be a cultural night. There's going to be a cultural night and a dinner. This same hall by 6:30 p.m. Please, and the program will still go live. And tomorrow, 13th January, is the investiture proper. Please, make sure you get seated here in this hall by 9:30 a.m. tomorrow. There's going to be live streaming of the program as well. Inform your people at home. And I'm reliably informed that a past executive secretary of the Nigerian Society of Engineers and a past Korean registrar, Engineer Felix Atume, FNSE, is here in our midst. Closing prayer, please. Committee members.
Today, what are we having today again? What time? 6:30 p.m.
Again, please be informed that there's going to be a cultural night and dinner in this hall from 6:30 p.m. Today, cultural night, stroke dinner, 6:30 p.m. The branch chairman come with group photograph with the president of the Nigerian Society of Engineers. Branch chairman. After the branch chairman, the division chairman. Closing prayer, please. Closing prayer. Second stanza of the national anthem. O God of creation, direct our noble cause, guide our leaders right, help our youth the truth to know, in love and honesty to grow, and living just and true. Great lofty heights attain to build a nation where peace and justice shall reign. National anthem. Thank you so much.